And another murder. We had over the past couple of days this report that a mother and her son allegedly murdered at Saxakali on the Essequibo River there by this man who escaped, Akeem Young, a rapist, convicted rapist, escaped from custody for serving 15 years sentence to rape. According to the story, he had sexual activity or sexual intercourse with a 14-year-old, which, as we all know, is statutory rape. He was charged, and according to the report, he claimed that he thought the girl was of age. He pleaded guilty to the charge. He was sentenced to 15 years, and he was sent to Mazaruni at some stage, which is supposed to be our maximum security prison. According to the report, he was out in the farm on the day that he escaped, almost 3 to 4 weeks ago, out on the farm, and he asked the prison officers, permission to go and defecate. The report suggests that after 5 minutes, the officer did not see him returning, and when he made a check, he discovered that the man, as we used to say long ago, the man had missed it. The man had gotten away. So an alarm was raised. But then I cannot recall seeing any report of any manhunt for this prisoner. None at all. I can't recall seeing any. Then what happened? A few days ago, the story goes that a 6-year-old called a friend of his father to tell the friend that the father had been killed. When they went in there, they found the father and the father's mother, that is this 6-year-old grandmother, lying there with chopped wounds. They said this prisoner might have gone, this escapee might have passed around there, and he asked them for food, which was provided, and then they said too that they even imbibed with some vodka, and something went wrong, and the man chopped them, and the man killed them, right? The man chopped them and killed them. But you know, today, if you, again, let me encourage you to go to Stabrook News today, and the editorial in Stabrook News addresses the same issue. I'm going to read the entire thing. They said there was the third paragraph. Well, let me read from the second paragraph. It said, on the 15th of February this year, Akeem Young, a rapist serving 15-year sentence, escaped from the Mazaruni prison. According to the Guyana Prison Service, the escape occurred around 7:30 a.m. At that time, Wang and an inmate were working in the fields in the custody of a prison officer. Wang then requested to defecate, which the officer granted him permission to do. Around 5 minutes had passed. The officer checked on Wang, and he had discovered missing. Then it says there is no public reporting of a sighting of Wang for some 22 days until he was placed at Saxakali, 25 miles south of Purika, on March 8th, and where he was alleged to have gruesomely chopped to death David Gomes, 49, and his mother, 75-year-old mother, Nellie Gomes. After they extended hospitality to him, the assailant has since disappeared. We don't know what efforts are being made. You know, something seems to be wrong at the Georgetown prison. Something seems to be wrong at the Georgetown prison. This is Mazaruni. We're not so long ago. Smalley, Royden Williams called Smalley, the most notorious, they say, criminal, serving multiple life sentences, was able to escape, made a daring escape. And what happened? What happened? They charged the man who was in charge of the prison at the time and others for conspiracy. I'm going to go into it in a little detail. Subsequently, the joint services killed 3 men that they claimed to be, one was Smalley and 2 were the accomplices of Smalley. They were shot and killed. The same confrontation. But remember the one, I think the Howard guy, they arrested him, they showed photographs with Howard being arrested, his hands behind his back. And then later on, they reported they were escorting him somewhere on an ATV, and he managed to attempt to snatch the gun, an AK-47, from one of the ranks, jumped off the ATV, and in that process, he was killed. And so many questions are still to be answered. One would have thought after this Smalley incident, the security protocol at the Mazaruni would have been, I think, to such an extent that a man can't go for take a crap in the bush and disappear. One would have thought so. But then no, that is not what has happened. And, to bring you further up to date, you remember, as I said, the Smalley incident, again, you had a case where following that Smalley escape, 6 persons were charged with conspiracy. And the thing says, let me, what I say, he was charged with, they were charged with conspiracy to assist in the escape of Smalley. The man who was in charge of the Mazaruni prison, a man who had reached retirement age and was called back because of his stellar performance. He was called back to continue to head that institution. And all of a sudden, he was conspiring for this man to escape. But I made the point then, and I'm saying again, that I don't know how the DPP can say that they're going to charge for conspiracy. Maybe the man was neglectful. I have no doubt maybe they were neglectful, which permitted the person to escape. I don't doubt that might have been the case. But conspiracy, you were saying that these people conspired. There was a meeting of minds among these 6 persons to allow this man to escape. And therefore, it was no surprise last week when I learned that the magistrate dismissed the conspiracy charge against them. And this morning, when I talk about conspiracy, I'm reminded of the charge that was brought against myself, Mr. Conway, and others in relation to the standing order review. They said we conspired to commit fraud. And the main investigator in that matter, Christian Dat Romana, who was at Soku, when he was in the witness box and Dr. Todd started cross-examining him, he said, these people are charged with conspiracy. Do you have any telephone record of them conspiring? No. Do you have any WhatsApp message? No. Do you have any email? No. So you have nothing to show that these people discuss this matter, but they are charged for conspiracy. And I have to go and check the Black's Law Dictionary, and I'm going to recommend that the DPP perhaps look at the Black's Law Dictionary to see what a conspiracy is. And it says, I read it for you, conspiracy or agreement between 2 or more persons. Well, let me read about conspiracy is a consultation or agreement between 2 or more persons, either falsely to accuse another of a crime punishable by law, or wrongfully to injure or prejudice a third person, or any body of men, in any manner, or to commit any offense punishable by law, or to do any act with intent to prevent the course of justice, or to effect a legal purpose with a corrupt intent by an improper means. They're going to be able to unpack that. They should be able to unpack that. But basically what it is saying, that in order for you to accuse a person of conspiracy, you have to prove that those persons, and the normal thing, along with others unknown, conspire. In other words, they either talk to each other over the phone, they send some message. That is what it is. There must be a meeting of minds before you can say someone conspired. But they charge these 6 people, destroying people's lives. The prison officers, as I said, the people were remanded based on this charge. Then subsequently, they were sent on bail. And here it is. When the matter is presented before the magistrate last week, magistrate dismissed the charge. No case has been made out against those persons, and they dismissed the charge against it. But the DPP, true to form, let me see if she can appeal this one. Let us see if she can appeal. But it is clear that these charges are brought based on sentiments and not evidence. Based on sentiments. There's a big outcry. Smalley escaped from the prison. Somebody must be held accountable. And therefore, we can charge the man in charge. We're going to charge all of them. Not with any neglectful act, but with conspiracy. That is what happens. Let me bring in CC to talk about this one. CC, I'm sure you saw that the matter dismissed, the no case submission, and the matter got another no case submission upheld by the magistrate or a judge. Go ahead, please.
And it reminds me of our case where the charges were conspiracy. But sometimes you want to know what really is the role of the DP. But before going there, let me look at this case here with this double murder. Mother or son brutally murdered saxically. There's on the outskirts of Bartico, not too far from the Mazaruni prison. We heard about the escapee. And apparently then he had no manhunt really looking for that guy. No, 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 no. We didn't hear no manhunt. They just maybe just left it like that, hoping maybe he turns up and they can get him. But it's a sad situation. And then the police investigation. I hope that they will do meticulous or proper investigation. I know normally they might be looking for a confession statement. They might see if they find the suspect and get a confession, beat him out, do all kind of thing, breach the judge's rule and get a confession from him. And then when the case go confession gone through the window, the case goes overboard. It's time that the police do some real meticulous investigation. And I always saying the crime scene is critical. You win or lose a case at the crime scene. That you win or lose a case at the crime scene, and the first thing the police giving up crime scene too quickly. You keep it as long as possible, as long as required. You lock down the crime scene. Remember when the major fire where those 20-person children died? We saw the Minister of Home Affairs and all them trampling down the crime scene. I don't know what happened at this crime scene, but there are some important things that you can look at. I could give them some advice. The thing that they said that he was fed. He drank vodka. So a couple things come into play. He used a cutlass to chop them up. They look for a cutlass. And if it's a bottle, sometimes like Leo, you can get fingerprint. They use a glass, you might get fingerprint. You use a plate, you might get fingerprint. Certain things, if you process the crime scene properly, you find fingerprints, you find hair, you can find fiber, you find clothing, you find blood, all kind of things you could find on the scene. I don't know what they did with that scene there, but it's important that they do proper investigation at the crime scene because there's where they could win or lose the case and not depend on caution statements. And then if we can move forward now, what happened with the case conspiracy to defraud? No, sorry, the conspiracy case for those prison officers gone through the window. No evidence that they conspire, either by words or by action or by deeds or any kind of thing. Nothing there was presented to the court in terms of conspiracy. And I don't know, but and also the people got to play a role in when you investigate in this murder. The investigators. Also, I would say that the commanders too. When the files come to you, you have to review the files. You have to look at statements. I used to look at statements first before I went to report because report would be glowing, beautiful report, excellent report, but the statements not supporting the report. I learned it from my very good friend, Compton Richardson, when he was a police legal advisor and I was a prosecutor as a sergeant. So there, saying that he got misled once. Look at the police report, wonderful report, and then he just recommended charges. But I'm saying the commanders them need to check through the file. Well, they don't have DDO, so I really can't talk about DDOs. I know about any DDOs. You get DDO in a division, don't gotta read a piece of paper to get the caution before charge. And most commanders, they get a regimental thing they do right in. DPP for advice, for advice, for advice, for advice. Or and when the file come back, without really going through the right for strict compliance, send up and send down like conveyor. You send up and you send down. The DPP don't be right all the time. Sometimes the DPP were there, and you as the police, you as the commander, you as the crime chief, has got to go through these things. I had cases. I know but 4 cases as commander, one on the East Coast and 3 in Barbies, where I wrote and the DPP has changed the advice. I can remember one where there was a fatal accident, and I ain't saying fatal incident, it happened in Twilight Zone. And the only witness there was the driver. A woman got killed. The only witness was the driver. And the investigating officer quite rightly recommended an inquest. The traffic officer inquest. The detective officer inquest. Recommend inquest. Me, the commander, recommended an inquest. The head of the CID, the traffic officer recommended inquest. The head of the CID say inquest. Go to the DPP, and they came up with one sentence. One of the junior lawyers who just out of law school wrote, charge the driver with causing death by dangerous driving. And I wasn't satisfied with the advice, and I queried it. I remember when some Felix was the commissioner, and I called Felix. He said, well, put down your views and send the file to me. And I did as I was instructed, and the file came back from the DPP. Sure, the DPP wrote about 2.5 pages and said inquest. So sometimes the DPP don't be right, and if you see things, if you see things that are not, that you don't agree with, you need to put down your comments and send back the file. If the DPP says they'll proceed, there's it, but record your comments. But what commanders doing then? For advice and comply with instructions, those kind of things there. That, and they need to do proper case management too. That is mean. Even the prosecutors also, they need to know the files. They need to know which witness is going to prove what. They need to go through the file and know them inside out. Sometimes I used to prosecute, and when I prosecute the file that I get before me, that is not the file. But I know the matter so much, that you could just adduce evidence from the witnesses because you know what witness will do. So the whole thing, it calls not only for the DPP, but the police have got to play a role. The prosecutor got to play a role. The commander got to play a role. The investigator got to play a role. And more so, the head of the CID got to play a role. And more so, the head of the CID is an attorney at law. So the thing is shocking, and much more needs to be done, especially when we're dealing with those serious matters and when person's liberty is at stake.
Well said, my brother. Well, let me tell you this. When you look at the commanders you have now, all the divisions, very few have the competence, have the knowledge and the experience to say that they can peruse a crime file and make cogent comments and recommendations to the DPP. That will happen. They are conveyor belts. The file goes to them and they forward it for legal advice. They don't even read the statements, I'm sure. They don't read. They forward the file. You pull them and ask them what the matter is about, how many witnesses there are, which witness say what. They don't know. They don't read these files. And I'm saying to them, as an experienced former divisional commander, I had stopped dealing with crime files when I was in Georgetown, in particular during the course of the day, the regular day. Stop. Silal Prasad was my detective divisional officer. Tell him, bring the files, you can bring it in. Why ain't reading no file during the day when telephone ringing and you have so many other issues? I will deal with them later when I am not distracted, when I'm not disturbed. And Mr. Conway is right. You have to go through the statements, read all the statements to make sure that whatever is contained in the report is supported by the statements. And the elements are borne out by one or more witnesses in the statement. First of all, you got to know what are the elements of the charge and whether the witnesses have indicated the elements in their statements. Other than that, you're not going any place. You have to go through the thing in great detail. What I used to do in the evenings, I would go through those files. At weekends, on Saturday, in particular Saturday afternoon, I go back to the office and I go through those files. And let me tell you, commanders and others listening, it's something I recommend to you. And you will see that if you spend maybe an hour or two in the evenings, or an hour or two, or perhaps even more Saturday afternoon, when the phone is not ringing and all that, it will amaze you as to the amount of work you can get done in that short space of time because you are not distracted, because you are not disturbed. It's amazing. So I adopted that. And Mr. Conway is correct. The DPP can be wrong. Let me give you another example. I was commanded A Division, and some of them on this live will know what I'm talking about. There was a particular businessman in somewhere in the Middle Road, La Penitence area, who was in the habit of discharging his firearm unnecessarily. He was given one warning, two warning, and he continued. And this day, he threatened someone with the firearm. So the firearm was seized, and a report was submitted by a particular, I think he's a sergeant now. They're still about. He used to be at Rhineville Police Station. He submitted the report to his the divisional commander, the detective officer, Silal Prasad. The report came to me as the commander. And when I read the report, I read the statements, I read the report sounded good. The report was going nice. But the recommendations contained in this report did not accord with what the body of the report said. In other words, all the way in the report, it was suggesting that this businessman was wrong, and that having regards to the previous incidents where he misused the firearm, we should initiate a process to have the firearm license revoked. That was the body of the report. When you came to the recommendation of the man firearm should be returned to him. So I put the file in a corner, and I told the detective officer I wanted to see this rank. I think he was a lance corporal or some. I wanted to see him at one of the meetings I held in the mornings. And when he came, I confronted him. Asked him how much money you collect to write this nonsense that you're writing. At which stage, the detective officer seemed surprised because apparently he did not read the report. He just forwarded it to me. He was surprised. And I asked them to know the man actually fainted in my office. It was a big joke around police headquarters. He's still about. If the challenge me, I'll call your name, your number, name, I got everything written down. So you got to read these things. And the matter, let me tell you too, in terms of the DPP, when the matter was forwarded to the DPP for advice, the DPP wrote back to me to say that no charge should be filed and the firearm should be returned to the man. So I wrote and I instructed that the firearm, I told them to write a letter to the firearm holder, for him to show cause why the firearm license should not be revoked. Listen to me carefully. The DPP recommended no charge, which is fine because that is the DPP's constitutional authority. But she went on to tell me, the same DPP, that the firearm should be returned. And I decided, well, the firearm will not be returned. And I told them to write the letter to initiate the process to have the firearm license revoked. And then like the man gonna complain to she. And she decided she gonna call me about this thing. And I have to let her know that is outside our purview. She has no authority to determine whether a firearm should be returned or not. None whatsoever, none. So understand this. Yes, she can tell you not to charge. You have to comply with that because she is the constitutional authority to deal with that. But when it comes to whether the firearm should be returned to this person or not, that has nothing to do with the DPP. Has no such authority to recommend that to the commander. That is the police. And there was a ruling, there was a decision, not a ruling, a decision, or an opinion from the same DPP's chambers in respect to the same matter, the same type of incident, which supported my view. And I had that opinion from one of the legal officers there. When I retired, I shared that with some officers. I don't know what now. Maybe I'm going to go into my archives and see if I can find it to share it with them. That is outside of the DPP's authority. Outside. Criminal charges, whether private or public, as we had explained, yes. But when it comes to the revocation of firearm license, DPP ain't got nothing to do with that. She can't instruct you or recommend that you take away a firearm license or return a firearm license. Understand the law, officers, policemen. Understand the law. Understand your powers. Not for you to abuse it, but for you to make sure that when you're writing, when you're interacting, you know what the law is, and you can do so from a position of knowledge and strength. But you don't have that now. So, Mr. Conway, I like what you're saying. I must read the file. Well, read the file to do what? Just read it and they'll see all the glowing errors and so on. And they can recognize it's an error. So you get a stage now where all the files, all the simplest of matters, sent to the DPP for legal advice. And that is why, if you recall, during the Dharamlal case, the DPP could have made a statement, or the DPP's chambers, that they get thousands of files to deal with. Thousands of files. Check to see the nature of those files. Check to see the nature. Files that should never ever reach the DPP's chamber. There's a process with these files. It comes through the divisional detective officer. It's a crime file. If it's an accident file, it comes through the divisional traffic officer. That is the first stage where it can be turned back if the offense has not been established. Then it goes to the divisional commander, another layer to check and say, well, look. And in many cases, if you know your onion, yeah, charges are to be brought, but you don't have to send it for legal advice. You can write there and then, if you know what you're about, to tell them proceed with this and this charge. Sometimes they recommend proceed as recommended and charge under section so. It's there, simple policing work. But I made the point that you have too many senior policemen who are wearing police uniform, but they are impersonators. They are not police. They are not police. In other words, they don't have the policing knowledge. They are political puppets put there, and therefore that is why you have these issues. And to come back to the prison escape thing, one of the students is telling me, I know that this recent one where this man escaped and killed, is alleged to have killed the mother and her son. The man who was in charge, let me get the name for you all, man. The name is Roddy Denart. Roddy Denart is an ASP, the assistant superintendent of prison is around. They say he was the 2IC, the second in command at Mazaruni prison. Since this killing of the two people, you know where he is now? You know where he is? He is arrested and he is at Bartica police station. Listen to me. The second in command of the Mazaruni prison has been arrested. His name is Roddy Denart. Arrested, and is at the Bartica police station. And my sources have told me that they're planning to charge him with conspiracy to commit murder. So the murder that is committed by this escaped prisoner, they want to link the second in command at the prisons in this matter. They want to. And don't be surprised if the DPP is a charge, because the DPP charges based on emotions, not on the law and the evidence that is there. But that is the thing. Roddy Denart, the second in command of Mazaruni prison, up to this morning, was at the Bartica police station, where he is under close arrest, they say, in relation to the murder of this mother and her son. That is what is being said. And let me bring in Mr. Conway before I move on. I have one more thing to talk about the same prison story. Yes, I don't know if you heard that, but the man, the second in command, was arrested. He's placed under close arrest. That's what I said. Close. I don't know if close arrest applies, but that is the information I got, that he's under close arrest at the Bartica prison in relation to the murder of this lady and her son by the escaped prisoner.
Yeah, I read it. I read it, and it's shocking, Paul. It's shocking. I don't know where the evidence I got. Maybe they manufacturing the evidence, Sometimes, and if you talk about the prison too, I walk with the investigation into the Gopal lady story, Paul. I don't know what's going on in the place. I don't know what evidence I got, by, and he's saying he's working on emotions,
Well, let me tell you what the same thing that you alluded to. That was the next thing I wanted to talk about, because they're talking about the prison, and you have a case where this is November last year, November 2023. Do you recall that they said they're going to be a full probe into prison authorities' early release of Bibi Nisha Gopal? Bibi Nisha Gopal was convicted for murdering her daughter. She killed her daughter. Matter went all the way up to the CCJ. That's the Caribbean Court of Justice, Guyana's apex court. And they decided that she is going to serve time, and they tell you how much time she's going to serve. And they said the daughter was murdered in 2010. In 2022, the Caribbean Court of Justice, she was served 25 years. That rules was served 25 years from the date of her conviction, with eligibility for parole after 15 years. Right? That's what they rule. Her stepfather who was initially found guilty of the murder as well, was freed by the CCJ due to insufficient evidence. Gopal's date of conviction was March 5, 2015, but the prison service admitted that officials calculated her sentence from the date she was remanded, which is October 10, 2010. And let me read what the vice president, the second vice president, is alleged to have said. Hey, I tell you all, I love research, you know. And this is Demerara Waves on the 9th of November, 2023. There will be a full investigation into the prison authorities, early, the woman from, hold on, it's a little mix up here. He said that there's going to be a full investigation into the early release of Nisha Gopal. This is according to Vice President Bharat Jagdeo, who spoke at a press conference hosted at the People's Progressive Party Civic Georgetown Headquarters Freedom House. When asked about the matter, the Vice President said an investigation would be done to figure out what went wrong and possibly whether anyone should be penalized. When the full investigation, and this is a quote, when the full investigation is completed, the question of accountability as to how this happened will be addressed. End of quote. Quote again, right now, the position of the government is that this cannot stand. That he's talking about the early release of this lady. Lady's sentence. They somehow do some thing cockwalk. Think up the date, release early quietly. They released her quietly. Nobody knew. And then here this, I was looking for the tape this morning, but I can't find it. Gordon Mosley did what we call a professional interview with the director, the acting director of prison, Nicholas Elliott, I think is his name. He did his background, Gordon did his background first, discovered that the woman was already released, and then he confronted the acting director. And the man denied. The man said, no, this woman is still in prison. And when Gordon confronted him with the fact, if you hear Salawala, he dancing here, dancing here, dancing here. And then he said, oh, the lady was released because she done serve her time. He argued, or he represented to the journalist Gordon Mosley, that the convict was released. At first he said she was still in prison. And then when confronted with the facts that she had been released months ago, then he said, oh, because she finished serving her time. And when they did the calculation, again, they discovered that that was wrong. Her time had not ended, and she was prematurely released. At which stage, I think they find she had Purika somewhere there, and they rearrested her and took her back to the New Amsterdam prison to continue serving her time. That is what transpired. Georgetown prison, there are so many other incidents. And the government, as represented by the second vice president at a press conference, said that there will be a full investigation. Well, that is when? That was November. So December, January, February, March, about 4 or 5 months. Time has come yet for them to tell us what has happened, how they miscalculated, and they're talking about accountability. These things will happen because no one is held accountable. No one. Coming back to the Smalley escape, the laws of Guyana said that in order for a convicted prisoner to receive visit, the director of prison must sign off. Up to now, they can't tell us how Smalley, a convicted prisoner serving multiple life sentences, death sentences rather, was allowed to have a visit from a Venezuelan woman at that. From a Venezuelan woman at that, you were allowed, and then the man escaped. Submachine gun, or a call to the police, semi-automatic machine gun firing. That's what the police say, the Cooperative Communication Unit had issued a release to say they found some semi-automatic machine gun. So people have to say to me that perhaps Guyana making that type because that type is not known any place in the world. So yeah, with Smalley escape, daring escape, up to now, they have not answered, and this is where Robeson Ben come in, the Minister of Home Affairs, they have not said to the public, how is it this convicted mass murderer was allowed to have visit when the rules or the laws of the prison, governing the prison state clearly when and how such a visit can be occasioned. But what happened? Nothing. Nothing. Yeah, somebody said conjugal rights. You say you use a fancy word, conjugal rights and so on. I ain't saying that my student might not know, but when people talk about conjugal rights, they mean you have the right to go and get little sex. That is what it means. You have the right to go and to get some sex. So that is what may have happened. I ain't saying that is what happened, but that's the impression we got as to what happened there. So, problem if the players, no one is held accountable. The very vice president, vice news in the living room, making allegation that he taking bribe to get Chinese contract, no accountability. So what do you expect? What do you expect? You say a man who sits there and talks a lot of crap when the Thursdays come and they say yesterday at Babu Jan as well. We can deal with that at some other stage. But that is the story with these two people who were killed and the prison officers and all of that that is going on. This is only some of what is going on in the prison. But I'm glad that the magistrate decided to free the prison officers because there is no evidence against them. Again, I say, when you charge a conspiracy, you got to prove that there was a meeting of minds. They come together at some stage. You got to get evidence of some telephone call, some WhatsApp message, some text message, some email. You have to have that. In the absence of that, how are you going to prove conspiracy? And you want to tell me that the DPP know that? You want to tell